What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League review codes. And, yesterday I talked about doing it one more time, talking about the game, and I said I wouldn't talk really about this game until we get to review scores. Well, I guess I'm jumping the gun, but we're still talking about reviews, so I'm going to count it. It's all okay, at least to me. So I guess what I want to talk about is what's going around online of people not having these things. Now, there's definitely a few things to talk about there. Look, I get, let's start with this first thing. I get why you would want to bypass the gaming journalist, right? So a lot of these sites saying, hey, we haven't gotten them yet. There's a part of me where it's like, fine. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally okay. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, it matters to them. And, there are a lot of people that look to these sites for their scores and stuff. So, that might hurt some people here and there. But generally, as we've even seen, there is fair criticism, I think, on this game. We've talked about it many, many times. But one thing that we've kind of consistently seen about this game is unfair stuff, too. And I would not be surprised, like with even the Gotham Knights situation, right? Remember when several review sites literally said it was part of the Arkhamverse, right? Just kind of like stupid things like that where they don't put in 5 minutes of effort or research to, look it up, to figure these things out. So you also have the previews, right? Now, is it a little like vindictive, right? So like the previews come out and they are not good. They were not good from the journalists. Now you can have a whole debate of were the journalists right and maybe the content creators were wrong? Like, was one hyping it too much, one was not? Or was it, well, maybe the content creators were just right. They actually saw what this game was and the journalists didn't. You can definitely have that debate, and we actually, we have talked about that. But the biggest thing, again, in terms of, well, why do they not have codes? Could that be a reason? It could. It absolutely could. I will say this, though. This is maybe a little controversial. I don't think that's the reason. The longer this goes, I'm not worried because it's like, as we've said about 1,000 times, the game is what the game is. You either like what they're doing, you don't like it, you're either going to get it, you're not going to get it. Again, there's fair criticism, there's fair praise, I think, and we've talked about why I'm getting the game, all of that jazz, right? A lot of summary-like things. And if the game gets like a 65 on Metacritic, 70 on Metacritic, is it going to make or break the game? It's definitely not going to look good. Nobody should be going out there saying, hey, yeah, if this game gets a 60 on Metacritic, it'll all be okay. I think in some ways it will be all okay, but I think just the literal look of it. You go on your favorite review site, or you go on your aggregate, right? Like a site that kind of combines them all. You go on those, and you see it's got that yellow, right? So yellow is mixed. So you're like, okay, well, and it's 60, 65, 68. It's not a great look. Now, does that change anything? Honestly, no. I mean, I gotta be real. Honestly, no. This game could get a 50. This game could get an 80. This game can get an 84. This game could get a 72. I really don't think it changes all that much. I think some people might use it to say, like, hey, we were right. You know what I mean? Like, if it's lower, people could say, hey, we told you this was a bad, live service decision. If it's higher, people can say, hey, I told you the game looked fun. I told you, we had fun during the closed tech test. You know what I mean? There's going to be those narratives. No matter what the score is, you'll find a group that kind of uses the score, I'm sure. But like I said, is there like an optics thing to it? There definitely is, and I gotta be real, like, it's definitely not a good look, right? Now, like, for me, I don't have a code. I haven't seen anybody get a code, and just for context, I know I kind of, like, glossed over it. So, like, people are reporting this, right? Originally, actually, at least from what I've seen, sites thought that they were skipped over. That's like one of the interesting tidbits of this entire thing. There were some websites that thought that they just, were kind of getting ghosted, right? That they just weren't getting contacted. And the truth is, they just haven't given, codes out. Now, okay, we talked about, are reviews meaningless? Are they meaningful? And, I've said this before, too. Like, I go based off the eye test. I make my decisions on games based off what I see. I really do. And maybe it's because I create videos where I try to keep myself kind of separate, but I do watch reviewers. I normally watch them after I've played the game or after I've already decided whether to get or not get the game, then I'll watch people. But I don't make which is odd, right? Because I make reviews, so people base things off of me, but I don't do that for others. You could, call me whatever you want, but that's honestly how I operate. I've said it, many, many times. If you want to go based off review scores, that's fine. You know what I mean? It's your choice. It's your preference. I have no problem with that. I don't do it. I think it's the better way to kind of like judge on your own, but I get different situations and I get people do it. So, okay, let's move on from there, right? Regardless of if the scores matter, if all that stuff matters, this is an odd case. It absolutely is an odd case. The game goes live on Tuesday night, right? No, I guess on like PC it goes live a while afterwards. I think Wednesday morning, but in just a couple days, full days, a couple days away, the game is out for the early access, right? If you pay the extra money, there's a world where review scores do not go live before that. And I don't think, again, just looks, just the optics of it, I do not think that's a good look. And I got to be real. Historically, games that hide the scores tend to be bad games. Does that mean, again, this game is going to be bad? Not necessarily. Does it also mean that, as I've said before and even said in this video, right? This game is I would say, kind of a unique situation. You're either getting it or you're not. I mean, the reviews I really don't think are going to mess with people all that much compared to maybe some other games that I think people are more waiting for reviews. I'm sure there's some here. I just don't think it's all that big of a number. But I will say, I mean, I want to use history. History is important to remember, right? No, but honestly, if you look back, and I mean, it's been said, and I'm sure it will be said with Suicide Squad, historically, games that hide their scores, games that have scores go live like a day or two before the game comes out. Back in the day, those games would normally be pretty bad. The scores would be very low. Now, I will say that I'm actually one of the only people I've ever heard say this. Not to boost my ego anymore, but I got to throw it out. And I have said this before. The more recent times, maybe post the stuff of 2020, okay? After that, whether it's because of leaks, whether it's because of, not being close to each other, kind of distancing and all that stuff, whatever the reason, you have seen more and more games do that. A lot of games scores go live a day or two before the game comes out nowadays. It's changed. It absolutely has changed. Back in the day, if the review came out 2 days, 1 day before the game comes out, that's a pretty good sign that game is not going to get a good score. Nowadays, most games get their scores a day or two ahead. I think it's to combat leaks. I think it's to combat... I personally think it's that. I think it's more like leaks, and you don't want things kind of getting out early, and that's just the way I look at it. But, it makes things messier, right? I guess the way that I look at it now is, even though most games have scores go live the week of the game releases, games that give the people the codes early tend to be the most confident. So if you get it, say you got Suicide Squad 2 weeks ago. They gave the code out 2 weeks ago, but you couldn't put the review out until the day before. That would be the new age thing, right? That last part. But the beginning part, that's a sign of confidence. You're giving people a lot of time to go through your game. You're not really afraid of it. And this has happened. I mean, this has happened kind of historically. I can tell you, even from myself, Plague Tale Requiem back in 2022, I got that game. I got that game about 2.5 weeks early, but I believe review scores for that game went live like 2 or 3 days before the game went out. That was my game of the year. And it's not because they gave me a code. That game is just, my favorite game of that year. So that's a personal example even to me. They were confident to give that game out almost 3 freaking weeks before the game release, but you still couldn't put the review out till like the day before. So that's a mix of like old and new, right? The old and new kind of style. And that's just how I look at things now. So I got to be real, again, and this is all honest. You can call me on this. I'm pretty consistent. I think I'm pretty good at this stuff. I don't care. If the score is a 62, it's a 62. It's not going to stop me from getting it. It doesn't have to. If you want it to stop you from getting it, that's fine too. I really don't care. People have to start doing that more often, not caring. It's normal for the scores to go live this late, okay? That's normal. But for people to not have the codes yet, I will say that's not a great sign. Does that mean anything at the end of the day? No. Could they be doing it just to like spite these people from the previews? I wouldn't put it past them. Hogwarts Legacy, which is also WB, openly and actively did not go through, these review sites. They went through creators, and they literally, like, that was their plan. That was literally what they wanted to do. So would it shock me that the plan for Suicide Squad is to go through creators, and maybe some of them are fanboys, maybe some of them are not, and there's genuine people, right? Is that the plan, or is the plan that you're hiding your game? Well, we'll find out. We'll find out really soon. But again, even regardless of that, nobody's gotten the code. There's not even content creators that have gotten the codes yet. So it's not like they're picking their diehards to kind of save them, right? And they don't want to do review sites, so they do content creators. That could happen, but it actually hasn't happened yet. They're actually not doing it for anybody yet. So I don't know. By the way, last thing I'll say, I'm recording this like midday Friday, maybe Friday night, maybe Saturday, maybe codes start going out. It's still late. It's still pretty darn late. So we'll see what happens. I'll be covering the review scores when they go live, like I've said before, and they're going to be a lot of fun. Like, I'm actually very excited to see what this game gets, and we'll talk about it. So let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.